Hello everyone, welcome to Ukraine War Stories. This game is completely free on Steam, and I actually saw it before it was released. It is a choose your own adventure basically type of game. It is story based, you get to choose each outcome and how it's going to go, so basically by your choices, alter the outcomes. This is supposed to be not real, but based on supposed real events and stories about Ukraine and I think the current war with Russia. That's as far as I know. Is that it's not genuinely real, but it's close to. Sources. So maybe it is actually supposed to be legit. I'm not hearing any audio, by the way. So, all right, Hostomel. Evening in February. It was barely past 1700, but it was getting dark already. I don't know why I'm doing this voice immediately. It's a terrible attempt at accent, but it is fine. Spring was on its way in, but we were still getting early sunsets and cold nights. Another evening, very quiet in the house. That was entirely too big just for me and Lilia. Ever since our daughter had settled in Kiev, no surprises there. Kostomel was always too small for her. Still, she kept in touch with us. In fact, that evening I was trying to figure out a present from her. A smartphone. Well, I wasn't trying anymore. I delegated the task to the neighbor's girl, Milena Mirzoyan. Milena is a bright girl, top of her class at the medical university in Kiev. Much younger than my own daughter Katya. Barely in her 20s, quick-witted, and full of life. Unlike me, a tired old man. I have been an aviation engineer for 40 years before retiring, and yet these modern gadgets are beyond anything I have ever worked with. Now, my wife, Lilia, she is a savvy one, but that evening she was preoccupied. Oleski, she said in a worried voice. Oleski, have you heard what Putin is saying? He recognized those republics in Donbass. She clutched at her chest. Oh God! The Russians are going to invade. I looked over to see her watching a Russian broadcast on YouTube, and I could only roll my eyes. For the last few weeks, what Putin was saying was everyone's favorite gossip. That a big war was coming. That the Russians were finally going to invade in full force. That's why Milena left Kiev a day ago and came to join her parents in Hostomel. Many people fled the capital in the last few days. It was as if everybody expected Kiev to be bombed to the face of the earth. Lily, please. Nothing's going to happen, I said when I caught Milena's glance. She was too afraid. Mr. Borisov, they've got so many troops on our borders. They wouldn't keep them there if they were just bluffing. Every place in the world does that with each other. So yes, they do that all the time. They even do that when they're not bluffing or threatening war. They just do that in general, which keeps tensions high. Because it forces them to treat each other as a serious threat. Such a stupid fucking war game, I swear. Well, that's exactly how bluff works, child. My child. We have nothing to fear because... Aha! First choice. Glenn will eat them alive. He doesn't have nearly enough forces. Putin will try to annex Donbass. At most. If Putin recognized those republics, don't you think he's after that? He's keeping forces on our borders to keep us in our line stretched thin. So that he can... I am suddenly stumbling. So that he can easily take Donbass and freeze the war for another 80 years. I tried to give the girls a reassuring smile. In retrospect, it may have looked a little smug. You know, at least I took first aid courses and stocked us up on some gauze. That'll be useful, right, darling? She looked at Milena, who replied with enthusiastic nodding. You could have done something useful as well, instead of buying more model planes. I just chuckled. I could tell she was just worried. She didn't mean it one bit. Look, if you're so worried, I'll go get the car fueled up. Say, on Thursday? We weren't using our car much, except to buy groceries. So, the near empty tank didn't seem like an issue. With my bum leg, I barely left home anyway. Lilia worked as a teacher. Her students were all distance learning. Then we'll go on to vacation in the Carpathias. 2 weeks. Until this whole ordeal resolves itself. You'll see, Revs, right? Stocking up on fuel is a good idea. Milena chimed in. My dad is stocking up as well, before the prices rise even further. I noted. I didn't believe war was coming, and if I did, could I do anything to prevent it? But there is something I could do. Help everyone stay calm. It's called morale. Morale. First day of war. There was a deafening noise outside, wrestling me from sleep instantly. At first, I thought I didn't believe my own ears. I thought I hadn't woken up at all, and this was all a nightmare. But then I heard the noise again. Explosions. Oh God, Loisha! They're bombing the airfield! Look, those helicopters are shooting rockets. Rockets? They're shooting the rockets? Then again, the Rockets weren't that great of a band, so I guess it's fine. Keep doing what you're doing. I looked around and saw my wife. She was already running towards the window. Did she hear it first? She was always the quicker thinker than me. After a night of sleep, stepping on my bum leg felt even worse than usual. I limped towards Lily and looked into the window. I didn't have the eyesight to make out the details, but I saw helicopters swarming Hostamel airfield, launching bright flares all around them. Not rockets, flares. They do it so our soldiers do not shoot them down. They are fixing to deploy our airborne troops. Lady covered her mouth with her hands and looked at me. I don't think I've ever seen her so confused and scared. Pack our things. We might have to leave town. As my wife ran around the house, packing everything of any value, I was trying to process what was happening. The war had just begun. I had seen it with my own eyes, but I still couldn't comprehend it. I was so convinced that the Russians would never attack upon their threats. What a fool I've been. There was gunfire coming from the airfield. It snapped me back into reality. I had to do something. When I went to check up on Lily, I saw her hands were shaking. I had to calm her down, or at least make sure she did not forget to pack anything important. On the other hand, I never got around to refueling the car, and only had enough petrol to get us to drive to the nearest fueling station. Sweets? I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. I feel like this and... Oh, so you're going to forget medicine if you don't help her. But I feel like these two are the best ideas, but then that's always good. My survival prep mind is like, you always want to get ahead of the curve. You want to prepare for anything possible. It's called what I call future-proofing. So you want to be able to do this. And the sooner you do this, well, actually, no, it's our neighbors for gasoline. The less likely you're going to have to contend with everyone else hoarding like fuel stations and going to each other if they catch wind that somebody has fuel. So... but medicine overall I feel like is more important, but then this allows you to move quicker and further. But you also like, you want to make sure morale's okay. You want to make sure that you help everything, you know, or everyone you can. Although I guess you're just really trading each other's current advantage in terms of morale. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a really rough decision, bro. Yo, I'm actually stuck. I don't know which one to pick. They're all equally as important, that's the problem. I don't know which one to go with. I'm gonna go with this. With a sigh. I joined Lily in packing up our things. We couldn't afford to forget anything, as we didn't know where we'd eventually end up, and if getting supplies would be a problem. We talked very little. I felt enormous shame for claiming just a few days ago that the war was not coming. Lily didn't accuse me of it, but I only felt worse because of it. I would have liked her to state the obvious, that I was being a damned fool. But no. When we were done, she just sat on the bed, her hands wrapped around her shoulders, and stared out the window. As I checked my bags, I noticed we didn't pack our medkits. Without telling Lily anything, I just quietly went to the kitchen and retrieved our medicine. That should be all. I put my hand on my wife's shoulder. The shooting outside quieted down and everything seemed to be normal again. But it didn't stay that way. Come evening, as the shooting around us got so loud, leaving by car seemed to be suicide. Our only option was to wait for the president's address and hope the situation gets clearer before the weekend. Oleski, what will you do? Lilia complained, sniffling away her last of her tears. Did you hear it? Did you hear how the war was, how loud it was? How terrible. And hugged Lilia closer. I sure heard it. Around 3 a.m., when we were sleeping in the basement, a shell hit our house. I didn't know what it was, but it shook the whole place. I was crawling around looking for my kin, wondering if we should stay put or run, while Lilia was covering her ears and screaming. Then, when we were sure the walls weren't tumbling down on us, she started crying. This would all be over soon, I hoped, but at that time, all I could do was hold her close. The very next morning, when the fighting had quieted down, I heard a knock on our basement door. The neighbors came to visit us. The whole Mirzion family, Milena and our parents. Oleskia! Lilia! David, the father of the family, walked up to me and firmly shook my hand. How are you two doing? Are you alright? We saw your house get hit. Thank God Almighty you weren't there. No kidding. We have to leave, David. This is getting too dangerous. David's wife, Ola, chimed in. We can't leave, Oleski Fedorovich. We've spoken with the Territorial Defense Office. They said it's too dangerous. There's already talk about Russian shooting cars. I wanted to curse. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Sure, the war had been going on for 8 years now, but it was in Donbass. on the edge of the country. Now Russians were taking their planes and tanks and bombs and all the way up to Kiev. I just shook my head. Tell me, did they take Antonov Airport? If they did, the road to Kiev would be wide open. We'd be seeing thousands, if not tens of thousands, of men and vehicles rolling out in the next few days. No, my friend. They didn't. It's quite the story, really, David said, and motioned for his wife and daughter to carry on without him. They brought us some supplies and took them downstairs. David, meanwhile, told me the news. They had yet to make it to TV, but the gossip had already spread around town. The Russians took the Antonov Airport, but it's all shelled to bits, unusable. They won't be landing anything there, or using any more planes. And David cut himself off. He didn't need to continue. Mirya too is gone. I worked for the Antonov Design Bureau for 40 years. Aviation was my life. Still is, however little life is left in me. And nothing at Antonov Bureau made me come even close to an An-225 Mirror. The biggest cargo plane ever designed. The biggest plane ever designed. A marvel of engineering. Soviet, Ukrainian, it didn't matter. Mirror was a treasure. And it always will be. I thought it was a terrible waste that it was barely flown in 3 decades of independence. But that day, I learned of a truly terrible waste. I felt a sting on my chest and clutched at it. David quickly rushed to support me. He helped me sit down on the ground. I couldn't talk at first, so he continued. What a rotten world, huh? I told my girl to wait out the war in Hostomel if it came. And now the war has come here. He reached into his jacket in our pocket, and before I knew it, there was a bottle in my hand. I was appalled at first, drinking at a time like this, but David kept talking. Nothing is sacred to those Russians. Destroying Mira is bad enough, but do you know what they do to women? If the Russians get here, if they do, I can't calm my girls down, and I can't protect them either. I don't have a gun. He reached to uncork the bottle, drawing my attention to it. It was the finest Armenian cognac money could buy. Well, that would actually be a smart idea, because it would help everybody. Well, apparently except for you and David, but that's fine. But this, I feel like, could be good in the sense that alcohol, especially if it's pure enough, can be used as an intensely strong disinfectant and antibacterial. So it's really good in like wartime circumstances to be able to save that kind of thing for those kind of incidents where you end up having something where like you have a bad open wound or something like that. Or you have a wound that would need stitches, or you have, something like that where it's any kind of open wound where even if it's small, but maybe it's deeper or something, it bleeds a lot. It's a great thing to wash it out with. It will hurt like living hell, but it's worth it because it will disinfect the fuck out of it. So, but I'm gonna go obviously with everybody. Reluctantly, David agreed. It was a magnificent cognac, and Lilia found us some treats to go visit. They were usually reserved for tea time, but this time, everybody drank. Even Milena, who, by her own admission, never even tried beer before. For the rest of the evening, the atmosphere had warmed up. David shared some news about the war generally going our way, and I tried telling jokes. It was a moment of normalcy in the crazy time we found ourselves in. And finally, the girls lightened up a little. The same could not be said about me and David. We put on a show for the women, but we couldn't voice our worries, even to each other. There's a peace of mind for Ola, Lilia, and Milena was a great reward to strive for, but it left us completely wiped. We left the women to chat amongst themselves and stepped back outside. As the day drew to a close, me and David were parting ways just before curfew. Shots were already ringing out somewhere far. The night, like the ones before it, was going to get very loud. Suddenly, we hear the sound of approaching vehicles. What do you know? Our armed forces has finally arrived? David asked, and looked out onto the road. Then his face dropped. As the armored vehicles rode down the road, we could see the bright white Z's painted on them. It has been a week since the war began. Just a week. An entire week. Time seemed to have slowed down, and every new day that came seemed longer than the last. Deep inside, my fear was growing. Fear for myself, fear for my family, my home, my country. Fear for the future. We heard bombs exploding outside, and wondered if the next one could hit us, and if we'd even survive it. This constant wait for death left us with neither energy nor willingness to do anything. All we did was keep checking the news. I don't know if what we wanted to see there, as good news was in short supply. But any new information served to distract us from the horrors around us. That's what we were doing, sitting in our basement, when my phone rang. Me and Lilia flinched from our sound. The happy melody our daughter picked for the ringtone sounded terribly out of place, sacrilegious even. It was David, our number. Ogleski, hide your phone! The Ruskies are going around town, taking them away. He hung up and quickly hid the phone under the floorboards. David's timing was impeccable. Upstairs, in our house, we heard a loud crash and heavy footsteps. The Russians broke into our home, or what remained. We turned off these lights, leaving me and Lilia in total darkness, and listened. Loshka, what do we do? Lily whispered. I heard growing panic in her voice. In the dark, I found her hand and squeezed it. Let's be quiet. Maybe they'll leave us alone. We weren't so lucky. In a few moments, someone knocked on the basement door. It was a heavy sound. He must have been knocking with the rifle's butt. Open up, creak, or we are breaking down the door. I didn't want to let the Russians in, but I didn't want to antagonize onto me neither. We had to turn on the light and open the door. 3 Russian soldiers descended into the basement. They were armed and looked ready to use their weapons at the drop of a hat. Lilia backed away from them, and so did I, using a rifle for support. One of the soldiers noticed my limp. What's wrong with your leg, old man? He must have thought it was a combat wound. It hurts to step on it. An old injury. I spent half my life as a king. He nodded and looked around the basement. We're searching houses, looking for Nazis and saboteurs. Do you know any Nazis in the city? It's a tough decision, right? Hello. Could I select? There we go. Shame. I'm gonna play dumb. I feel like false lead is antagonistic. I don't like that idea, because if they go into these different empty houses and they find they're empty, they're probably gonna get pretty pissed, I would think. I don't know. And that, especially if they're already having a journal and they're already aggressive, you feel like that would actually piss them the fuck off. You know, of like getting sent somewhere and finding out that, and like, do you think we're stupid, you know, kind of thing, because they're also egotistical, you know, the male syndrome when you're in a situation like that, yeah. And you're also well programmed, indoctrinated, because that's what military people are. They're basically just drones for government. So, and play dumb. I don't feel like any of those are good ideas, but I don't want to make Oleski's mood drop any further either. I just feel like it's a dangerous prospect. I tried to make something up. I realized the up was on the other side. Oh well. Hoping they'd simply leave us alone. Sorry, we don't talk to our neighbors that much. We wouldn't know any Nazis. As I spoke, I felt my hands start to shake. I was too old for such stress. Then I thought about the Russians' reaction if they noticed and thought I was lying. This only made matters worse. Yeah, obviously. My vision got dark, but suddenly Lilia came to my rescue. What are you doing? Can't you see he's worried out of his mind? My husband is a hero of socialist labor. His family and father reached Berlin in 1945. And you're asking him about the Nazis? The soldier looked at me, then looked at Lilia. Then he spit on the floor and commanded the rest to leave. I slid to the floor down to the basement wall. There was a ringing in my ears. The room was spinning out of control. Deafened by my own heartbeat, I could barely hear Lily when she said, "Here, drink this. It should help." A few steps of cold water did bring me back to life. When my vision cleared up, I looked at Lily with gratitude. "Thank you, darling. What would I do without you?" Lily didn't say anything. She just smiled and squeezed my palm. I thought once again how lucky I was to have such a wife. No changes in parameters. Heh. I don't understand what that means. Oh, is that the like mood and stuff? Okay. They are still fighting, but only on the outskirts. Lily had never gotten used to it, but I did. They are still fighting was something I kept telling myself as I saw Russians rummage through houses on our streets. A unit of Chechens, Kadrovites, as they are called, even dropped by a wreck of a house. There wasn't much to steal, but they stole it anyway. Me and Lily had enough sense not to argue, so they just took what they wanted and left. The Mirzon's turn hadn't come yet. The Mirzon's turn hadn't come yet, but they knew they would not be so lucky. That's why I couldn't refuse David when he asked his daughter to stay with us for a few days. Me and Lilia were just a tired old couple, and with my leg, I wasn't much of a threat. The Russians were done with us. Thank you so much, Oleski. Those people are monsters. David shared as Lily helped Milena make her way into our basement. Have you heard the word around town? Of course I had. The Russians took whatever they wanted. They ate anything that could be eaten, drank anything that could be drank, and took anything they could resell back home. I wasn't born yesterday. I expected as much. It was war, and I could accept it. But what they did to women, I refuse to accept. Are you sure you don't join us, Olga? We'll make room. He shook his head. No, Fedorovich. You just keep Melina hidden for a few days, okay? Me and Olga will manage somehow. We'll keep real quiet. Puts his finger to his lips and smiled. I smiled back at him. As he walked out onto the streets, I waved to him goodbye. There was a pop, like a firecracker going off in the distance. David fell to the ground. He screamed. What I did next, I could never be proud of. I threw myself towards the basement entrance and slammed the door shut. Downstairs, Lily yelped at the loud bang. My chest began to hurt, and I clutched it with one hand. A second distant pop. The screaming stopped. I think I waited for hours. Milena was downstairs, covering her mouth, looking in mute horror, looking at David's eyes. I think I waited for hours. When I finally peeked through the door, slow and careful, making no sound, there was David alright, and two Russians, one standing over David and another rifling through his pockets. And what did you do that for? He was a Nazi, can't you tell? I know them when I see them. The other shrugged in the dark. He was not being serious. I could hear him grin. They laughed. Then they both let themselves a cigarette. I closed the basement door and kept it closed through the night. Milena cried for hours. Lily held her hand and did her best not to cry too. But in the morning, she too joined in when she heard Ola's wailing outside. In the morning, there was fighting on the outskirts again, but closer to us. Sometimes bullets whizzed through the air right above our fence. When I opened the door to our basement, Ola crawled towards us on all fours. But something had to be done about David. I feel like this is the best choice here. Like, by far the best choice. So... yeah. But... I still feel like this is a good idea. So I want to do that. But what I'm going to do is... I'm going to do this... I'm going to turn... Of all things, I'm going to turn the music down again. Because, like... This track is getting really loud compared to the others. I don't know why that is. Actually, you know what? New save. Alright. I could not leave my friend like that. So I got a shovel and crawled towards David. As I dug a grave for him, I had to stop at least 24 times. The air would get too hot, the shots too loud, and the ground would shake so hard it knocked us all off our feet. In the end, it was barely a grave. David's broad Armenian shoulders barely fit in. It seems like the earth had refused to believe he was dead, but it had to suffice. And while it was a little relief for the girls, we did David good. The dogs weren't going to get him. Supply raid. By the 10th day of the war, our supplies were dwindling. Me and Liliana always tried to manage with little excess and had very little food stocked up. Why would we? The shops nearby had everything we needed. But no, there were thrice as many of us. The Birzons brought some of their own supplies with them, but it wasn't enough for 4 people. Someone had to go get the supplies. Lilia didn't want to let me go. There was still fighting in Holstemel. Every day we heard explosions, machine gun fire, and artillery barrages. My wife even wanted to go look for supplies herself, but I managed to talk her out of it. If anybody was going to take such a risk, it had to be me. I told her these Russians wouldn't give me a second thought. There was no use in shooting an old cripple. I thought it would just be a waste of ammo. I wasn't a threat to them at all. I was trying to convince myself of this as much as hell. Eventually, Lilia saw things my way, or at least pretended to be. Orcha and Milena talked very little in these last few days. David's death was heavy on them. With him gone, they were on their own. I had a double responsibility now. Milena cried a lot. Looking at the dark circles under her eyes, I thought David should have taken her somewhere else. Someone stronger and healthier. When the gunfire outside quieted down, I took my cane and grabbed my old backpack. Lily, stay quiet down here and keep everyone inside. I will be back soon, I promise. I will see if anything's useful nearby, and I'll be right back. She nodded, barely holding back her tears. After what happened to David, she feared for my life even more. It was very quiet outside. And after the dark, damp basement, the sunlight was blinding. When my eyes did just do it, I just wished they didn't. Many houses on our street were completely ruined, either heavily damaged or simply gone. The intact ones had all been broken into and looted. The Russians took everything: clothing, household appliances, tools, even children's toys. I couldn't understand what kind of person could do that. I saw ransacked cars everywhere. Many of them were even missing their wheels. Some were shot or even flattened by armored vehicles. Vehicles, no. Inside one such car, I saw someone's mangled remains. I looked away in horror and disgust. In the streets were also full of bodies. People in civilian clothing were strewn about among the debris left behind like broken dolls. I had no idea why they were killed. Were they just in the wrong place at the wrong time, like David? Did they draw someone's anger? I refused to believe this was all happening on the streets of my Hostomel. And yet, I still had the task to complete. I had to look for what I could find. We had a pressing need for many things, but with my broken leg I would only manage to find a single purposeful trip. Because yeah, alcohol does have a fuckload of uses. Like I said, disinfectant is the main one. Gasoline could potentially work. I guess their car was one of the only ones that wasn't touched for whatever reason. I don't know how that would make any sense. I like the disinfectant better. But the car might be the better idea. Because yeah, it would be a future tense thing. Maybe eventually. And there's a potentiality it wouldn't work out. But to just stick in the same place the entire time feels like a terrible idea no matter what. Like, yeah, you know, if you stay there, they already know you. They're not going to fuck with you. But then again, you know what I mean? I don't know. And plus, maybe they're eventually going to get sick and tired of this place because what's the point? There's like nothing there left for them to do or steal or anything. So it could end up being the safest place you have. And plus, it's kind of like when you're out in the wilderness or something, it's always best to stay put when you lose track of somebody. Or somebody loses track of you. It's always best to stay put wherever the heck you are when you realize that happened. And just stay there as long as possible. Because there's always the inevitability that, you know, people are going to eventually backtrack. They're going to figure out the last place that they remembered seeing you. And you know where that was, approximately. So you stay there. You stay put. And then it makes it safer for you. And usually it can make it easier for you to be located and found. Or vice versa. If you start going to look for somebody else, like it is, they're going to be looking for you. And you're just going to end up never finding each other. And you're going to get more lost. Which is always a bad idea. So like, again, especially when everything's completely destroyed, it could be the best possible case scenario for these people to instead just focus simply on staying put, especially with his condition with his leg. But then again, you would think over time that would really plummet your mood because there's nothing there. I mean, you have each other, and that can be just enough, but it's just a prospect that's like, it's again, it's like everything in life. There's a massive set of trade-offs with everything. It's like, this has a big trade-off, that has a big trade-off. This is such a rough, tough choice. I'm gonna do that habitual thing, and I'm gonna save again. Because, seriously, this is absolutely, like, one of the toughest decisions, but I'm gonna go for gasoline. Our best option would be to evacuate and leave this nightmare behind, so I headed for the nearest gas station for some fuel. I tried not to think of what would happen if the Russians saw me carrying fuel around town. Getting to the gas station took me more than an hour. I found it ransacked, same as any other building along the way. Broken doors, heaps of trash rolling around in the wind, and abandoned cars. Sadly, the station was all out of gas. Whatever I tried, I couldn't even get a few drops of fuel. I decided to try my luck with another gas station closer to the highway. However, as I walked in that direction, I soon noticed a tall smokestack rising over the rooftops. The gas station I was counting on was burning. My only option was to drain some fuel from the abandoned cars. This took up to an hour. But since I kept checking my surroundings... Oh, wait, what? This took up to an hour. Oh no, yeah, that is right. Weird. I didn't get the context there for a minute. But in the end, my jerrycan was full. Another empty car had a bag of groceries in its trunk. Perhaps the owners were trying to leave Holston, but could not. I didn't want to think about it too much. My priority was getting back home safely. As I walked back home, the fighting resumed, and judging by the sounds, it was headed my way. I sped up to the best of my ability. A few times the explosions were ringing out a single street away from me, making the ground shake under my feet. I wanted to drop the supplies I found and try to run, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I couldn't come back home empty-handed. When I finally reached my home safely, I couldn't believe my luck. It was already getting dark outside, my leg was on fire, and my back was killing me. But Lilia's adoring gaze made up for any discomfort. Her look made me feel like a young man in his prime again. For the first time in forever, I felt useful. Mobile connection. Oleski. Mobile connection was down more often than it was not. And even then, we had to go outside to catch any. But even so, the gossip spread around quickly in Holston. The fighting had died down. The Russians had the free run of the town. And that's when the news started coming in. News I didn't want to believe. People said the man was shot for not showing the Russians his phone. Another man did show them his, and the Russians shot him over something they found in it. Another man was shot for wearing camouflage pants. Another for asking soldiers what they were doing in Ukraine. I didn't want to think of it. I didn't want to believe it. Most of the soldiers in the village were barely adults. Yet those who shot at David Mirazon were barely adults too. And every night we heard more gunshots. And every night we heard women screaming. Poor Milena was terrified. She kept beating herself up over heading to Hostomel before the war. Kiev, we were told, was still holding out, but Hostomel, as we'd soon find out, Hostomel was lost. One evening, we sat huddled in the basement. Me, Orla, Lilia, and Milena, who hid in the farthest corner. Fearing the worst, we were always ready to hide her under the blankets, as if she wasn't here. And the Russians were rowdy that evening. Their gunfire and frenzied shouting echoed across the town. Suddenly, we heard someone bang on the door, and mere seconds later it flew open. Milena hid herself immediately, and the rest of us jumped to our feet. We heard a commotion coming from upstairs, and from someone's slow and messy descent. A Russian. When he stumbled into the basement, I recoiled from the stench of sweat and alcohol. He could barely stand as he looked at us. His sleepy blue eyes were almost white. Good evening. So what's it going to be? As if he was continuing a point he made before. Somewhere upstairs, if not hours ago. Was there any girls left in this town? My heart sank. Lily and Olhar just blinked at each other. The man stood at the exit, trapping us inside, his rifle at his shoulder, way out of our reach. Why did it suddenly turn to Lilia? Lilia. Then, he moved across the basement, towards the bedding where Melania was hiding. My heart sunk. Lilia. Luckily, Lilia spoke up. What are you celebrating? I was baffled at first, but then I too put the dots together. The smell of alcohol and the shouts outside. The soldier was already barely standing when he came to us. As it turned out, that's why they went for the bedding, to land onto it with a loud, tired groan. I couldn't breathe from strain. Milena was barely a meter away from him, hiding under a pile of blankets. We took Hostemel. Ha! We took everything up to Kiev. It's next. Soon, your president. He grinned and drew his thumb across his dirt-caked neck. Him and the rest of us. Him and the rest of the fucking Nazis. We had to keep the boy distracted and get him to leave us alone as soon as possible. Yeah, you could knock him the fuck out, yeah. Milena's mood would go further down. I think her mood's gonna go down no matter what, right? Yeah. They kept him talking. Yeah, you can't afford that. Telieski. Getting more drunk. Poor Milena. I worked to distract him. We offered him tea and sweets. I like the idea of getting more drunk because he'll probably black the fuck out, but at least it's the hope, right? And if he blacks out, you can, well, I was gonna say you could carry him out, but actually, Orhan and what's-her-face would have to do it because your leg's not good enough, I'm sure, to carry a man out. But I'm gonna go with the tea and sweets because I feel like that could feed the ego and make him think that, oh, you're on our side, you know. Maybe not, I don't know, but. Oh, I can't do that. Right, because we don't have sweets. Right, and I didn't get the alcohol. Fuck! I didn't think that would happen. Good, good. All the rest of those Nazis. Lilia chirped. Just be careful, boys. You must have someone waiting for you back home, right? Parents, surely. Do you have siblings? I chimed in. The boy was neither intelligent nor well-spoken, but we listened to every word. And when he was done answering, we asked more questions. The stories he told us were awful. The boy didn't seem to come from a happy household, and his home village, somewhere in North Russia, was sparse on young women. He said he was conscripted a year ago, and wasn't even supposed to be in Ukraine. But he was having the time of his life. Take whatever you want, eat whatever you want, fuck local girls, shoot every once in a while, and when I go back, they'll give me a medal for it. Our talk lasted for so long I was afraid Milena would suffocate under the blankets or give herself away, but she did well. She later told us she was shaking the whole time, but I didn't notice. I believe I saw several kilograms from sheer... I lost several kilograms from sheer stress, but finally the boy seemed to forget what he came to us for. Just then we heard that someone else walk through the open basement door, another Russian. He too was armed. Siri! Get the fuck up! Sarge is looking for you! What the fuck are you even doing here? Finding us some girls for the night, like yesterday. I told the fucking sergeant where I was going. The man got on his feet, grumbled under his breath. I winced at their crass exchange, but said nothing. This wasn't the time nor the place to tell the youngsters to mind their language. Thankfully, the soldiers were about to leave anyway. Well, leave these old fat hags alone, you idiot. We found someone younger. Now 0. Loses hope because it's at 0. Damn it! It took my hope away. It took my hope a while to erode, but when it did, there was no going back. At first, they promised that the war would last 3 days, then a week, then until the next weekend. Then Russians took Ostomel and were already shelling Kiev. Like David predicted, it was all going to be over soon, but not in the way we expected. I just knew it. It would end with Zelensky dead, and the population put through filtration camps. And there, nobody would care. I am the hero of socialist labor. Oleski Borisov could not go on. The Borisov family died with the city. Jesus Christ. Wow! Damn. I still don't feel like that would have ended well if I got him skunk drunk or gave him tea. The tea in the sweets probably would have worked. Maybe. I don't think that would have had a negative impact necessarily on the other private. I think that that might have still had a net positive. But I'm willing to bet if I did the opposite and I did the alcohol, that was going to be a problem. You know, I guess it feels horrible to say, but technically David's morale didn't matter because I guess he was going to die no matter what. So there's a lot of different outcomes. Obviously, it's a well done choose your own adventure game because it's. I hate that choose your own adventure too, actually, but you know, because every outcome really, I guess, really does heavily impact the direction it's going to go. But yeah, that's it for this, I guess, episode of Ukraine War Stories. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like. You know the drill, because it lets me know you enjoyed, and it lets the algorithm know you enjoyed as well, meaning inevitably others will as well. So it's incredibly helpful, and I really do appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for your crazy support lately. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you whatever my next video might be. Until next time, see you around. Thanks for stopping by.